Okay. Ready to go? Thank you, Tom. Thank you, DePIN Day, for having me again. It's my third time hosting a panel. Really excited. Did Austin and then Singapore. So thank you to Tom and the Fluence team for continuing the tradition. We're doing the backbone of DePIN, building scalable and modular infrastructure. Look at this panel. Look at what these guys represent. Don't have to say much. I'll let them all do introductions. Yeah, so before we get into the question, why don't we do like a soft intro? I'm Scott Full. I'm the head of growth at the growth lead at Peak Network and the founder of DePIN Daily. I'm also now building the first RWA DePIN DeSci accelerator called Orbital Beam. So yeah, I would love to talk to anybody about that later on, but let's get the show started.
Everyone, I'm Chase. I'm the AI and infrastructure lead at Off-Chain Labs. So that starts with RPC, dev tooling, bridging, infrastructure, and then all the way into physical infrastructure. And that, of course, ties into AI as well. Leading those efforts in the Arbitrum ecosystem.
I'm Brandon, Director of Strategy at EigenLabs. We're building EigenLayer. Before that, I've run infrastructure for staking and DeFi, private companies, public companies, for funds. So big fan of the infrastructure and excited to talk about it today.
Hey, I'm Clements. I'm a solutions architect at Consensus for Decentralized Infrastructure Network, or DIN, and we decentralize the Web3 infrastructure for both Infura and MetaMask, and expanding much further. We're running Arbitrum archive nodes. We are building an AVS, and happy to talk more about how we scale and make things modular.
Yep. Hello. Yeah, my name is Harish. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Grid. So we're building a super app for DePIN, creating a liquidity layer where we are creating an index token that lets miners mine index token instead of the native DePIN token. So we work with most of the DePIN projects. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. Let's just get into this power pack panel. I can't believe we assembled the Avengers here. Let's get to it. What are the biggest challenges in building scalable and reliable infrastructure for DePIN? You want to start off, Chase?
Sure. I can speak at a chain level, and I'll let these guys go more into the actual physical infrastructure and the build out of that. At a chain level, it's largely around how do we get the throughput required, while of course keeping low transaction fees and high speed, which is what we're known for. One of the things that Arbitrum has done a really great job of is actually proliferating node sales on the network. So one of the things this helps with is, of course, decentralizing other DePIN networks, and then also incentivizing the community who is then rewarded for holding and operating these nodes. You can also launch your own chain using the Arbitrum stack, and these nodes can be used to validate said chain. I've seen teams pay portions of their sequencer revenue back to the node holders, which is pretty cool. It's largely a challenge of throughput, and then also how can you think outside the box? So Arbitrum has Stylus, which adds Rust to the EVM, so you can now write smart contracts in Rust, C, and C++, which is, of course, much more performant languages, which allow for more compute intensive and memory intensive computation, and this was like a Herculean effort from our developers. So cheers to them.
Yeah. Bootstrapping is a huge barrier to entry. You're trying to come in and build a network of physical infrastructure. You want to undergird that with layers of trust. You want a big distributed set of participants. You want to be able to build a service and then create guarantees around those services. If you're bootstrapping all of that from nothing, that can take a while to get something established. So maybe you need a chain. Maybe you just need high performance services that your DePIN stack needs to make use of. Things like data availability or event sequencing or who knows. And so I think just getting all that stuff together and getting it off the ground is a major challenge. And so at EigenLayer, we're trying to build tools that set up a foundation that you can build on for spinning up services that make use and compose existing services.
Yeah, so wallets have to connect to a lot of networks because everybody's starting a new network because it's easy to start one if there's a easy roll up as a service or ARP stack. And so access to networks and that breadth is really important, but also the expertise to the depth that you need. A lot of DevOps people, and I think that's way underrated, is being able to find the right people to spin up new networks and be able to maintain them and work as a team, because we're all maintaining and running these bare metal nodes and optimizing, but developers want things that work, and we can't just have low performance. Just because we have that breadth doesn't mean that we can just have poorly operational things. So being able to fix things on the fly is also very, very important.
Yep. And also, I think like one key problem of DePIN is like how you kind of, still it's very complex for users to deploy Node and get on board to DePIN. So, so I think a lot of functionalities are still not like, easy as like any Web2 user can start using it. So at Grid, like, we try to kind of abstract a lot of complexity, how like, even a Web2 user could easily get onboarded to DePIN, and like a lot of complexity stays on the back, and we kind of aggregate the hardware, liquidity, and users, and in a way like how a user can just have $100 and how can he kind of get onboarded to DePIN and like start earning passively. Like, so how can we kind of make consumer facing applications for any user that kind of abstract the complexity. So that's what we're doing at Grid. Happy to add more.
Oh, thank you, Rish. Let's get to the next question, man. Amazing answer, guys, from everyone. How can modular infrastructure improve the efficiency and sustainability of DePIN networks this time?
I'll get started in high order. Let's get it started. I think the modularity story, I think, is pretty straightforward, and it gets at what Clements was just talking about, that it can be difficult to operate a high performance service, even if you're operating just in a little niche. And so, if with a modular ecosystem, just the fact that you can focus on the one thing that you're trying to do and do the best job at that, and then make use of services that are being built by other people who are also just focused on their vertical, is a huge advantage of modularity.
Yeah, within DIN, we started as Infura as a centralized service, and we still have that SaaS model. So we're kind of progressively decentralizing our business model by, giving our traffic to other providers and by negotiating those deals. And I think that taking advantage of, for example, EigenLayer, building an AVS, the bootstrapping is really important, because we could have launched a floating token that would have done, and everybody would have been focused on the token instead of focusing on the work. And so here we're obviously
Can you say it again for the people in the back?
like don't just focus on the token value, focus on the work. And so you're launching for the product, and you can test your product without applying it to a floating token, right? You can see where the testnet comes in and experiment with the economics prior to finding your product market fit, but also then prior to launching the right economics afterwards.
Hey, Clements, I just want to touch on what you said. Do you think that's why you're seeing a lot of tokens not do as well as people thought they were going to? I mean, sure, the market has stuff to do with it, but these sector specific, you're kind of seeing a lot. I mean, other than the ones who make on-chain revenue, right? The ones that are, not surgically inserting the token, and it becomes just speculation, right? There's no value, there's nothing accruing value in the real world or real world application bringing value to the token other than number go up, number go down. Do you think this is more of like a VC thing? Do you think this is a problem that, can we fix this? Because this is not one chain, right? You're seeing it on a lot of chains. But yeah, just curious, because since you talked about it, what you're thinking.
It's really tough. I mean, I think that tokens have their place, but you do have to remove it from the speculation, because it's not about that. Game is separate. That's that we call it kind of tech crypto instead of money crypto. And so tech crypto is benefiting and helping with the reputation of smaller providers and kind of bringing them with you. I think, the token plays are kind of overvalued in some sense and probably hyped up everywhere, really. So there's going to be rise and falls of tokens unless there is real link to real usage. And I think it links a lot to not just capital formation, but corporate finance. So if you look at where tokens apply, it's either marketing, the tech side, or corporate finance, because you don't want to give up equity to your cap table. Then you can create a token that might have some of that value too. So anyway, that's kind of a negative point of view of those tokens, but you can find the right product market fit with the right token.
Awesome. Yeah, I think when you hear from the non-degens, because you see it on Twitter, I think it goes a long way. That's why I wanted to have you, say what you're thinking. Chase, do you have anything to say? Or
I would say 2 points. I would say fundamentals are coming back, but that implies that they were ever actually here. But I do think that in the long run, people will start to understand that you can value these things actually even not even that differently than you value an equity through like discounted cash flows. Of you should believe it or not, these things do make cash flows. Going back to the piece on modularity and how that's important for DePIN, it's incredible for customization. So if you're building your own chain, you might want to use your own gas token. It might make the most sense because you're posting tons and tons of data like a grass network. You might need to use EigenDA, which can pack in tons of blocks.
I was gonna cut in after, but
Yeah, I got
Xiaomi. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, the point being, customization is extremely, extremely important for modularity and creating the right Lego bricks for your Lego house.
okay, here's another touch-up question because we're talking about modularity. How do you guys feel with a lot of these hardware devices coming out that aren't modular? They're not future-proof. And you see, like after a year, we're not going to name names, but after about a year, you see some of these turning to either paperweights or discontinued, not doing that service anymore. When I would like to see, again, future-proof, something like doesn't even have a USB connector on it. Like things change so fast, but how can we add a LiDAR sensor to it or, something to add to it as opposed to another device I have to buy for $500 and then a year later, there's another one out that has a little extra stacks on it, and kind of having this conundrum that we're having with devices. So yeah, just curious what any of you guys, know or think about the modularity on the hardware side.
My daily driver is a framework, so you can kind of see where I am on the spectrum of caring about that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, the whole disposable hardware world that we live in, where it's like, oh, the battery's dead, time to throw it in the trash and buy a new one, is unfortunate for a lot of reasons. So I think that, yeah, there's the open hardware thing, making a dent in crypto. I think it's a great match, because a lot of the values are shared between those communities.
Part of it is I think you are giving devices to consumers that were previously operated by businesses, and businesses were fine upgrading their hardware every couple years, but consumers were like, what the hell is this? Why do I have to upgrade to continue to earn? And the network is basically saying, this is what we do. Hardware is going to continue improving year over year over year in perpetuity, but it's an interesting problem that probably needs to be solved. How do we get the hardware to the point where I can just buy something and operate it forever?
I never thought about that's funny. I love that point. I never thought about the user part, because businesses are usually taking care of that. It almost goes back to a lot of people, like regular people, like our family members who aren't in crypto. Do they really want all that custody? Do they, a lot of people just rather somebody else take care of it. Let's see. Let's get to the next question here. What role does decentralization play in ensuring the resilience of DePIN infrastructure? And anyone could start off.
Yeah, I think I think the beauty of DePIN itself is the decentralization, how able to kind of run systems that are not easily breakable, right? Compared to centralized services, you are kind of able to bootstrap a community of nodes, and how are you incentivizing? and also like touching back, like on the token play too. I think the challenge here is like how much of incentive is good enough for users to run this hardware services, right? And somewhere like it goes like, hey, I'm putting $1,000. Like, how can I kind of make it up like in next 2 months or 3 months? Like, and then like continuously, how are you kind of still maintaining the service standards that anybody could start using it? Like one thing in Grid, like we kind of also go to the middleware and how can you enable multi-mining, like in a way how users are able to kind of really fast track the ROI, like instead of them kind of taking 6 months to kind of take off the initial investment. With multi-mining, can we fast track like to 1 month or 2 months, and the more focus goes on to the services part. Like, so I think yeah, so going back to your question in terms of decentralization, I think it also goes to how much of incentive or how are users incentivized to really not just like focus on running the hardware, also keeping up to the services as standards of a web 2. So I think
Yeah, but resilience is for us about being able to spread out failover as necessary. So we work with a lot of infrastructure providers that are, their main job is to run bare metal nodes. So they're pretty focused on that. And every chain, like we don't just get one provider with one, server in the middle of nowhere. That's not the resilience we need. We need a decentralized group of parties to come in and run the infrastructure and to secure it properly as well. So it's a main part. And yeah, I remember like early days of BitTorrent, you have to be the seeder as well as the let's take you.
That's that real quick too. That's the point. When someone tells me they're doing fully decentralized storage, I'm like, I think you have centralized ping when something can't be pulled up, but we don't want to get too technical for the crowd. Yeah, but go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I think the role that decentralization plays is going to depend on what kind of service you're trying to roll and where it is in its life cycle. There are a ton of services that maybe it's a totally new idea. Maybe it doesn't necessarily, you haven't proven out PMF yet. So you want to launch it in a federated way and onboard a smaller number of participants. Maybe you want to focus on, quality of service to start and tracking down PMF. And then once you get there, you want to open up the set. I think that's a totally reasonable approach. To some of the other points that were made, I think it's hard to build a performant digital system where you just start out with a single node. So you're probably going to have a bunch of participants that you want to get involved at the beginning, but it can make life more interesting as you try to create services that can be run by an open set of participants. Because on one hand, that could be a great way to get your costs down, open the market up to more participants. But you got to make sure that you're maintaining the quality of service that you need to still actually be competitive, not just with other fully decentralized services, but also the centralized ones. So it's a balancing act for sure. And I don't think people use things for the most part, just because they're very decentralized. Decentralization is there to solve problems, whether that's censorship resistance or transparency or what have you. So you gotta, use the tools that you need to get the guarantees that you want.
Alpha.
Without the decentralization component, it's just pen. So it's pretty.
Yeah, and we don't need no more acronyms too.
Yeah. I think one of the best parts about decentralized networks in the context of DePIN is you can take high capex problems like building out a cellular network, which is going to cost millions and millions of dollars in government contracts and et cetera, to build out cell towers, what have you. And you can now distribute those costs among a small number of regional providers that are providing, let's call it cell coverage or mapping data to a smaller area, and you can incentivize them on a smaller basis because these rails are so efficient and so cheap.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm wearing a shirt that talks about like client diversity. So this, like all the different Ethereum, on your consensus layer or your execution layer, you have to have developers build on different languages so that you have that resilience on the technical side. Because if there's a bug, then, in Geth goes down. That's not great either. So having that from the developer point of view is really important.
Oh yeah, man. That even more alpha. Let's get a little bit more tricky with the questions here. How does the interaction between different infrastructure layers, so compute, data, automation, execution, create a stronger DePIN ecosystem? And yeah, anyone can start off.
In terms of the interaction between the different sectors itself, I think how we're going to enable like the cross chain or like the cross platform communication. For example, like I was reading a use case where like the Helium and Demo, like how like Demo's using Helium to really validate locations. Like similarly, like I was reading a use case on D-Travel where the decentralized Airbnb, they're using Helium to validate if there is a physical Airbnb there or not. Like so more and more like how we are able to kind of enable this the cross platform communication. I think it's going to make the DePIN more efficient, like enabling different use cases and ability to kind of like not you bootstrapping everything by yourself, but rather like using the other platforms data to kind of really able to fast track the growth itself. Yeah.
Hey, Harish, I really like how you took the parallel markets approach. I think that's one of the coolest things about DePIN. Another example, you could take, an agricultural DePIN RWA like FarmScent. And now imagine taking a SkyX weather antenna, putting that on every underdeveloped farm. And now that farmer is going to be getting a better insurance rate from where he's farming. And think there's endless of possibilities. Like you said, cross-chain, cross-sector. Again, guys, collaboration over competition. The rising tide lifts the DePIN arena. Stop all the chain fighting, the gatekeeping. It doesn't get anywhere. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it creates a lot of opportunities for, anytime you integrate other systems, because you can go to other providers that spend 24 hours a day focusing on their specific vertical. One of the challenges it creates is near and dear to us at EigenLayer, and that's around the verifiability and like the guarantees around all this, because you want to be able to tap into other services. You want those services to be high performance. You want them to be distributed. You want open set participation. You want them to be cheap, but you also want to be able to actually verify that things were done correctly. And so, especially when you start talking about DePIN systems where maybe they have throughput requirements, where you're probably not putting every RPC request on a chain somewhere, and you need to start getting kind of creative about how you create guarantees around how you identify and deal with faults. When you do have open sets of validators, when you're plugging into services coming in from a lot of different providers, and you still want the overall application to actually be able to communicate the trust of all these underlying layers that we spend all of this time and money perfecting, the end user actually needs to be able to like experience that level of guarantee at the application level, and it's hard.
I was just not really many notes up based on what these guys said. But getting all these things to work in concert is the real challenge. Getting them all to work well individually is a challenge, and then getting them all to work in concert together, efficiently and correctly and verifiably is a whole nother challenge.
Oh, 100%. We got about 5 minutes left, so I wanted to kind of close out with I really like this question. And then also at the end of the question, maybe give the crowd a call to action, where they can, obviously I could see up here, but if I'm not shout your chain or your protocol out, go ahead and do that. What does the future DePIN infrastructure look like in the next 3-5 years? Hopefully we don't call it DePIN anymore, but that's just me. But yeah, I would love to hear what these legends think.
Yeah, maybe I can start. Like, I think like more and more like as DePIN starts to evolve, like we're going to see a lot of subsectors within DePIN. At Grid, like we call this term called geo DePIN for projects that require like a physical device. And we call like DVIN as decentralized virtual infrastructure, where like projects like Filecoin, Render, and then we have the decentralized energy sector. I think there are going to be more and more interesting use cases that are going to evolve, and we each with like unique needs and also like unique incentive mechanisms, etc. And so our grid, like what we are focused on is more on the liquidity side of things. Like we are trying to create a deep infi. How could you kind of enable different consumer applications, that currently is lacking in DePIN, like a lending, borrowing, to like perpetuals to, and for in order to create that, you have to create the liquidity layer underlying that kind of forms the foundation for the financial infrastructures. And so that's why we focused on grid. And I think as DePIN scales to the next $1 trillion industry, I think we believe like liquidity will become a key challenge, and that's why we're trying to help there.
Yeah, I'm hoping for more self-custody and self-control of the assets and where I am able to maybe leverage my AI agent in some way for it to do its own businesses, to make its own money, to kind of go off and have fun, but also choose different types of infrastructure yield. So if you are focused on this particular infrastructure, it's all started with mining, and then from there it's diversifying through different chains of mining, but then you have new layers like EigenLayer, and you can then become stakers and then validators and operators on top of that. So I think there's just more and more layers of that will happen for better economic security, but having that self-sovereign ability to control my bank account and to control kind of what that looks like, I feel like that's where we're headed towards, is DePIN for self-sovereign sake, right?
Oh, I love that. You got me hyped up with that one.
Yeah, so the goal of EigenLayer is really to make off-chain services as easy and as trustworthy as on-chain services. So just deploying and plugging into contracts. And so the way that we get there is by really expanding the design space for services that are both performant and actually make commitments and have guarantees. And I think that the outcome of that will be that today, if you build a crypto app lately and it has good performance and good UX, you probably plugged in a lot of third-party APIs that are fully trusted. I think we want to move into a direction where you can unbundle all of that stuff into these distributed open set networks of services and actually build an app that is usable and good, just by combining all these different services together, and really reducing the number of centralized and trusted components that you need. And the outcome of that will be similar or better user experience for users, significantly lower costs of application development. You don't need to raise $10 million and hire 5 senior engineers to bang out an application and all the integrated services. You'd be able to pull stuff off the shelf. And then for folks who are in the business of running infrastructure, a lot more opportunities to participate in these networks and make money.
I'll tell you what I don't see in the future is somebody coming to me and saying, "Hey Chase, we really love running our DePIN architecture on Arbitrum. We just wish the blocks were a little more expensive, or we wish the chain was a little bit slower." So scaling the throughput of the chain and decreasing the speed of the chain, which Orbit chains can already run at 100 millisecond block times, which is quite quick. And then adding more languages to the stylus compiler, so anything that compiles down to WebAssembly, like I said, Rust, C, C++, potentially even Move in the future. Adding more languages to that compiler.
And awesome. Thank you guys so much for not only the alpha, but just educating everybody here. I know it's really hard to break down some of this technical stuff, but I think you guys did an amazing job. Give a nice round of applause for my name. Thank you. And let's take a great issue.
Thank you.
Okay.